Hi, Chris McLoone here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about foam, specifically fluorine-free foam, and what that means to firefighters, what that means for how we extinguish fires. And with me today is Kurt Becker. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Solberg Company, which is the firefighting foam division of Perimeter Solutions. So, Kurt, thank you for joining me today. Welcome. I think really to get us off the ground, what would be helpful would be just a little bit of a background on today, what is available foam-wise for structural firefighting. We always think of foam, or at least going back to, when I first became a firefighter, I'm always thinking of, hazardous materials. We look at ARF, aircraft rescue firefighting vehicles. They always carry foam, but we don't hear as much about it on the structural firefighting side. So, sorry, to get back to my question, foam-wise, what's available out there foam-wise for structural firefighting?
Sure, Chris. Happy to answer that. And thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. And Happy New Year to you and to everybody that may be listening in. Honored to be here. Happy to represent the Solberg Company and Perimeter Solutions with this conversation. So when, the question is, what is available right now in the marketplace in terms of firefighting foam, specifically for structural firefighting? To answer that question, I think it would be helpful to go back to the Firefighter 1 and 2 training that everybody got during the Fire Academy and talk about the different kinds of foam. And I'm going to just touch on this real briefly. So foam is divided into two broad categories, Class A and Class B. Class A foam is what you typically see used in the Forest Service application and in structural firefighting. Class A foam does a great job because it reduces the surface tension of the water droplets as they're being expelled through a firefighting hand line. It allows for much greater penetration of that extinguishing agent into the combustible materials that are burning. And so the firefighting foam in a structural firefighting environment is a great tool. It's an underutilized tool across the fire service in North America. But we think that there's a lot of technology out there right now that is super impressive and would be a great thing for company officers, training officers to really consider advocating for when you're looking at your SOPs in your own department. So Class A is what you typically see in a structural firefighting application. Class B foam is used for hydrocarbon fires. So for fuel fires, typically is what we think of when as structural firefighters. The tanker that overturns, the car fire where there's impingement on the gas tank, et cetera, where you've got liquid fuel burning. Class B foam, instead of penetrating the fuel, it forms a barrier over the fuel, creating a separation between the fuel and the oxygen, thus extinguishing that fuel fire. So the big difference between Class A and Class B foam is how it attacks the problem. Class A foam penetrates the problem to get to the source of the combustion. Class B foam covers the problem, separating the fire from the oxygen, thus limiting or extinguishing that ignition point there.
We've had a lot of different types of Class A and Class B foams over the years. When I came in right off the bat, the pumpers that I've had throughout my fire service career have always had a foam cell on them. But we used to carry, obviously, most of us did. I mean, I think you and I have spoken. Our fire service careers are kind of parallel. I've got about 33 years in right now. So AFFF was what we used.
Right.
But now what we're hearing a lot about in the fire service is fluorine-free foam. So could you talk about that? What does it mean? How does it differ? And how does it really differ from the foams, the more, I don't want to say traditional, but the foams I traditionally have worked with over the years?
Sure, absolutely. So when I came on the job in 1999, much like you, the industry overwhelmingly used AFFF on their apparatus, specifically designed for those Class B fires, where you're seeking to smother the fire and separate the fuel from the oxygen, right? So the key for most of those Class B foams was that they were comprised of fluorinated materials. So fluorinated material was designed. It was a research effort put forth by the Department of Defense following World War II, when there were a number of tragic marine fires, with our naval fleet that couldn't be extinguished. So obviously when you're talking about battleships and aircraft carriers, there's massive amounts of fuel on those vessels, not only to run the ships, but also aircraft fuel, et cetera. And so the DoD realized that we've got to have a solution to this. And so a lot of work went into creating that AFFF technology post World War II, and that permeated into the industrial and municipal fire world rather quickly when those entities realized that they had the same problems. And so for the better part of 50 years, when firefighters were using foam, they were using foam with fluorinated technology integrated into that product. The upside is it works great. So if you've got a fuel fire and you've got AFFF, it's going to do a very effective job of smothering that fire and separating the fuel from the oxygen. A lot of companies in the industry began to realize that they needed to get ahead of the curve. One of the things that Perimeter Solutions, Solberg company, has been very proud of is always being on the forefront of that technology evolution. And leading the industry with fluorine-free technology. And so, it's easy to create fluorine-free foam. In fact, if you think about all of the Class A foam going back to when it was created, it's always been fluorine-free. So Class A foam has always been comprised of non-fluorinated chemistry. It's that Class B foam where you see the fluorinated stuff be pervasive. And so, it was this tricky project to take on because, obviously if you're dealing with a fuel fire, those can be pretty dynamic. They can be pretty dangerous. They can be explosive, both literally and figuratively. So you can't compromise performance. And so, the trick that the industry faced was, how do you create a fluorine-free foam that will act as effectively on fuel fires as the traditional AFFF foam has? And, I feel very confident in saying that we've absolutely turned the corner on that. I think it's important to point out that the development of AFFF didn't happen overnight. That was a decades-long research and development project. So it took quite a long time to get that technology perfected, and we're in probably the second decade now of fluorine-free technology being something that the industry is talking about, and I think we've really, like I said, we've turned the corner, and there are some products out there right now that are working every bit as good on fuel fires as their AFFF counterparts, without the side effects of that fluorinated technology that is a concern, rightfully so, for so many people.
Now, talk about some of the advantages that foam offers when using it to battle a structural fire.
So, and I think that's a great question, Chris, and I appreciate you asking it. So firefighters, structural firefighters in particular, have, this real deeply entrenched commitment to battling fires with water. I mean, we've been doing it since St. Florian, began putting out fires on the battlefield however many millennia ago, right? Since Ben Franklin founded the fire service in the United States, we've done nothing but put fire out with water, essentially. And so, breaking that mindset is a challenge. But the reality is this: while water does a very good job, it is far from perfect when it comes to extinguishment. One of the biggest challenges that we face as an industry in our use of water is the residual damage to the structure that goes with the extinguishment of a fire exclusively with water. For most urban fire departments that have the ability to get to a structure fire in, say 5 minutes, they get there, it's past the incipient phase of that fire evolution. I would venture to guess that well over half of those structure fires would be classified as room and content fires, right? And typically those room and content fires are put out with less than a tank of water. So, most engine companies are rolling around with, call it 700 gallons of water. And in most cases, you can battle and effectively extinguish a fire with less than a tank, right? However, the mop up or the overhaul phase is where we really, go overboard in terms of how we address a problem, because nobody wants that dreaded rekindle call in the middle of the night, right? I mean, certainly something that everybody cringes about. And so, so maybe we put out that room and contents fire with 500 gallons of water, but we pump another 2,000 or 3,000 gallons of water into the building just to make sure that everything is out. And that extra 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 gallons of water does more damage to the house or the business than the fire itself did. And I think if you look at most post-incident analysis, that assessment will hold true there. And so what we have right now in the fire service is the opportunity to rethink how we're attacking this problem. I'm not suggesting that we get away from water, right? However, what we have gotten away from is using that foam cell on these engine companies in our everyday operations. And I think that's really where the American Fire Service would benefit, is to reevaluate the use of foam in its everyday operations. Because if you were to go out and fight a dumpster fire today or a car fire today, certainly a room and contents fire, what you would find is if you used foam in that initial attack line, you're going to put the fire out faster. You're going to use less water. In an enclosed environment like an apartment or a single family dwelling, you'll see the IDLH cool much more rapidly. You'll see your visibility improve more quickly. And if you were to clock the amount of total gallons flowed into that structure, you would notice a marked decrease in the amount of water that's being flowed into that structure. And it's relevant, obviously, in a house fire. The less damage you do, the quicker the residents get moved back in, right? But it becomes even more important in a multifamily dwelling. You've got a 3-4 story apartment complex. You got a fire on the third floor. Well, if you're dumping 3,000 gallons of water in that third floor apartment, the people in floor 2 and floor 1, and if there's a basement unit as well, they're going to be out of of those apartments for quite a long time. As a restoration company is coming in, insurance companies are fighting over things. So the residual human impact of overuse of water in an emergency situation is significant. And the same holds true for businesses. The vast majority of businesses in America are small businesses owned by sole proprietors, and their entire livelihood is based on being able to operate as close to 365 days a year as they possibly can. If we can limit the amount of damage done by water when we're fighting business fires, then we get those businesses open back up faster, and that's got a ripple effect throughout the entire economy, right? Because most of our fire departments not only depend on property tax, but they depend on sales tax. And if you've got a retail establishment in your business or in your still area, and they're pumping dollars back into the local economy, some of that's matriculating back through your city. The faster that shop can get open, the faster they can get customers walking through the door, the more revenue that your city has available, the more successful that business is going to be, and the more effective you're going to be as a civil servant, protecting your community and taking a more holistic approach to that problem.
Before, because I want to learn a bit about what you offer for some of the solutions that you offer. But before I get into that, you've used the word technology a few times today, and technology is not normally something that I hear, and I think that most firefighters will hear when we're talking about foam. When we don't often think of foam technology, what do you mean by foam technology? When you say it, what are you referring to?
Well, I think when you look at the pure definition of the word technology, it's any advancement that can improve the efficiency of whatever task it is you're performing. So, if you were to go out into your backyard and try to dig a hole with your hands, you would find that to be a very frustrating and arduous task. However, if you grab a piece of technology vis-a-vis a shovel, that job will become much easier, right? You go down to your local hardware store and you rent a front loader or a skid steer. You'll dig that hole even much more quickly. And so, technology in its most simple form is our ability to find more efficient ways to solve problems. In our modern world, we tend to think of technology as having an electronic underpinning, right? Technology is this computer that we're communicating through, this podcast that we're recording, the phone that we've got that is more advanced, than all of the technology that sent rockets to the moon, et cetera, right? That's our current mindset definition of technology. But in its purest form, it's a hammer, it's a shovel, it's anything that can make a difficult task easier for a human being to complete. And so, that's the way we view foam. It's a tool. When you go to FDIC, there's always going to be a couple dozen exhibitors that are showcasing their latest and greatest version of an axe or a Halligan bar or a pike pole or whatever it is, right? And looking for that edge to increase the tactical advantages that the firefighters have, when they're going into this very dangerous and dynamic environment. And I would argue, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about this, but I would argue that short of an SCBA, the single greatest piece of technology a firefighter can employ on a daily basis is the use of foam through their primary attack hand line.
So having said all that, Kurt, what are some of the solutions that Perimeter offers or Solberg offers in terms of products for structural firefighting using foam?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the question, Chris. The the product that we're the most excited about, or the solution that we're the most excited about, is called Solberg Spartan. And the reason that we think this is going to be such a game changer in the industry is that it combines the best of Class A and Class B foam in a fluorine-free package. And so, as we talked about earlier, Class A foam has historically been used on normal combustibles. It's very prevalent in the Forest Service, for example. Class B foam has been used on fuel fires, very prevalent in the industrial setting as well. But what we've created with Solberg Spartan is a true hybrid Class A, Class B foam. And it's extremely effective on normal combustibles, anything from a vegetation fire, a brush fire, a dumpster fire, a fuel spill fire, and certainly extremely effective in a structural firefighting application as well. And the benefit to a fire department is that by using a hybrid technology, using a Class AB foam, you eliminate half of the foam that you need to carry in stock in your fire department. You also take the guesswork out of, at 2 o'clock in the morning, something's on fire. Which bucket do I grab? Do I grab the Class A or do I grab the Class B? This allows a fire department to purchase one and only one foam to solve 99% of its problems. And the cool thing about Spartan is it is proportioned at 1%. So we talked earlier about AFFF and how that historically has evolved. And in most cases, you were flowing AFFF at either 3 or a 6% proportion rate. So with Solberg Spartan proportioning at 1%, what that means in simple terms is that 1 5-gallon pail of Solberg Spartan will generate 500 gallons of foam. So if you've got a 500-gallon water tank on your engine company, 1 5-gallon bucket will turn that entire tank into extremely effective Class AB foam that will get after a fire much more effectively than 500 gallons of water alone will. In fact, I would go out on a limb and say that you'll be surprised at how much less foam you would use if you were proportioning it correctly compared to water itself.
A lot of what you have talked about today, or a lot of what you've been doing today during this, is educating, explaining, the Class A, the Class B, the fluorine-free. But nationwide, fire service-wide, there probably is a lot of education that needs to be done regarding foam, firefighting foam use. What resources does Perimeter Solutions or Solberg or both offer for fire departments, firefighting personnel to learn more about foam?
A great question. I appreciate you asking. So we want to be your partner. We don't want to just sell you a product. That's not our goal. Obviously, that's how our business works. But our goal here is to be the most trusted partner to your fire department that we can be. To that end, we've got Know Your Foam classes. We are happy to set up live demonstrations with, large fire department training programs, or if you live in a metro area and you've got a training consortium, we would be more than happy to work with our local distributors in those areas, create a couple of burn days, where fire departments can, use our foam and use water side by side and see the difference it makes and see how easy it is to use this. I think one of the problems, as an industry that we have had is that we didn't really understand as firefighters the technology that was at our fingertips with foam, right? It was confusing, because again, you can proportion it at 0.5%, 1%, 2, 3, 6%, right? So 2 o'clock in the morning, you're the driver on an engine company. You pull up, to a house fire with flames, pushing out the windows, and you're thinking about a million other things in that instant, rather than, well, what proportion am I supposed to use this foam with, right? And so what we've tried to do is really make it easy, and really simplify the process. It's one setting, it's 1%, and you should really try to use it on every single fire. This isn't just for use with fuel fires. This is for use in structure fires, especially dumpster fires. If you think about what people are throwing in dumpsters these days, that's one of the biggest hazmat incidents we roll on, and we don't even think of it as a hazmat incident, right? And when you think about the role we play in this continuum in our communities, you think about how we fight dumpster fires, for example. What do? We fill them up to the very top, right? I mean, that's the typical operating procedure. If you've got 700 gallons of water in your tank, you're putting 700 gallons of water in that dumpster, because a lot of those fires get deeply seated, and that's been the most effective way to do it. The problem is that all of that stuff that's in that dumpster then flows right down into the water system, and that's how we end up with contaminated water supplies across the country. I'm not trying to be an advocate for the environmental movement or anything like that, but it's the water that we drink, it's the water we bathe our kids in, right? We need to be mindful of that, and if we can reduce that runoff, we can reduce that pollution, minimize that damage, then we're being good stewards for our community. And that's really the mindset that I think a lot of fire departments that have adopted this all hazards approach are beginning to take, is recognizing that we're not just here to, break glass and put out fires. We're here to be meaningful stewards of the public trust, and to do our very best to be as responsible as we can in solving these very complex problems. And so I really do think that over the next decade, you're going to see firefighting foam become something that we talk about a lot. We integrate into our standard operating procedures on a regular basis. And I think a decade from now, the idea that we're going to attack a fire without foam is going to be as absurd as going into a fire without an SCBA on would be today. So.
Well, Kurt, my thanks to you again for sitting down with me today to talk about this. But before I let you go, are there any general comments you have about the advantages of using foam, or any takeaways you would definitely like the audience today to walk away with?
I think we've covered all of it. I would just say this as a parting comment. There's this, kind of humorous mantra that the only thing firefighters hate worse than change is the way things are, right? We talk about that all the time. And I think, when you look at how challenging this job has become, how dynamic, how stressful it has become. Every time a fire truck rolls out the door, they're in, a potentially very chaotic environment. And our natural instinct is to keep our firehouse life as static as possible, as a counterbalance to that chaos that we encounter out on the street. It takes courage, it takes guts to challenge the status quo, to not necessarily accept just on its face, well, this is how we've always done things, right? We're as an industry, I think especially the Gen Z and the millennial firefighters that are really, coming of age right now, this is a great opportunity to very constructively challenge that status quo, to ask the question, could we be doing it better? It's not a rejection of how we've done things historically. It's a challenge to put out there. Is there a way that we could do it better? Is there a way we can serve our community more effectively? Is there a way that we could make this very dangerous environment a little safer and a little cleaner for the firefighters operating in it? And I think the reality is that if we get those change agents in these fire departments looking at a technology like foam, the answer is going to come really quickly. It's going to be those folks that are willing to reject or at least challenge, well, this is how we've always done things. And this that mindset that has driven all of the change, all of the evolution in the fire service. It's how we went from being fire only to combined fire EMS, is how we got away from, pulling our masks up over our face to actually using an SCBA when we went into a fire. Later, using that SCBA through all phases of overhaul, integrating paramedicine into the fire service in a lot of communities. Like, it's that kind of forward thinking, always looking for a more effective way to serve our community that's really driven the fire service and the evolution of our business over the last 30 years. And I think firefighting foam really fits nicely into the next decade of that evolution.
Well, I lied. I had one other question for you, and that is just how can people learn more?
So you can visit our website, perimetersolutions.com. I would say the most effective thing to do, though, would be to schedule an appointment with us. We want to come out. We want to meet you where you work. We want to work with our distributors in your community to set up live demonstrations so that you can get your hands on this stuff. Because we can sit around the firehouse kitchen table and we can watch podcasts all we want to, but nothing's going to change or nothing's going to take the place of actual hands-on work. And I think the more firefighters get comfortable with this technology, the more we're able to partner with you around the education and help you understand the value of the technology, why and when to use it. The more comfortable firefighters are going to be making that leap and changing their SOPs and adopting a foam-first mindset in the way they operate.
All right, perfect. Well, again, my thanks to you, Kurt, for sitting down with me
Thanks
to
so
talk
much
about this. If you want to view any of our previous podcasts, they are all archived at www.fireapparatus.com/podcasts. If you have a topic you would like us to hit on, please let me know. I'm at chris.mcloone@clarionevents.com. So again, this has been Chris McLoone with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Have a good one, everyone, and stay safe. Thanks again, Kurt.
Thanks, Chris.